Calling all pitchers and pitching coaches, PitchDoc 2024 is your destination for revolutionary pitching education and information, from the newest technology to advances in biomechanics knowledge to take-home strategies and application for making your pitchers better today. Join us August 8th and 9th at the Westin O'Hare in Chicago. Experience transformative sessions led by leaders from the college game to technology companies to player development experts. Use promo code OGXPodcast to take an extra 10% off. Visit go.ogxsoftball.com/pitchdoc. Again, visit go.ogxsoftball.com/pitchdoc and use code OGXPodcast to take an additional 10% off. Spots are limited, so secure yours today. All right, we are back with another episode. I am in OKC, and we're going to be talking about OKC probably. It's day one of the World Series, and surprising to no one, there's a rain delay already. So, I thought it was funny yesterday. They asked every coach in the presser, like, how do you feel about it always being hosted in Oklahoma? Because that's always a topic of everyone's discussion since Oklahoma's always in it, and, yada, yada. But, I think there's maybe more of a conversation around the weather here at this time of year. Last year, Ashley and I were here. We stood in thunderstorms. I will say, Ashley, today the announcement said, find a safe spot in the concourse, which is much different than when they booted us into the parking lot last year in the middle of a storm. So they've changed their ways, which is good because that was ridiculous. So
yeah, this is not what this podcast is about, but that's happened to us before, like literally our day one of going to games, just watching as fans and spectators. There were thunderstorm warnings, and the protocol was that you couldn't be in the stadium at all. So they just made everyone stand in the parking lot in the middle of thunderstorms.
Crazy. I'm solo this time, and so I was thinking about last year, and I was like, okay, I need to bring a poncho. I was like making a list based on our experience last year. What was crazy for us, which would be the same this year for me if this happens, is that we didn't have a car. Mm-hmm. We had nowhere to go. And so it was just like, go stand in the parking lot while it's lightning and hail.
No, it's crazy. If they caught you trying to like stand under the wall, like the roof of the concourse, like the police came. It was crazy. So I'm like, they would rather us die than literally break the rules here. So I don't know what was more alarming, is that protocol or the fact that all the people that were actually from Oklahoma had no problem with it. They were just standing, like I was seeing what the sky looks like, and it was terrifying to me. You guys know,
this is even a Tuesday.
Yeah, right.
Totally. I was just like, these people are a different breed, man. Right. They were just staring at it like, nah, we're good.
Like, let me call an Uber for lightning safety right now so I can hang out in a car.
Yeah, right, so I was like, man, I don't know what was more alarming to me, is the Oklahoma response to that.
But they definitely said last year that same thing, said leave the stadium. Right. So the fact that this year it said find your safe spot in the concourse, I was like, ooh, maybe hopefully they changed the rules from last year, because that was crazy.
I do remember last year, like Twitter was nuts over that. Yeah. Like there were multiple people saying like, you've got to be
buildings and just like,
and also like, listen, we were fine. At the end of the day, we were fine. But there were like elderly people and children that were like trying to like, be up against a wall. It was crazy. Anyway,
it was crazy. So moving on, let's talk about super regionals first. Wow. Crazy super regionals. I saw that the Alabama-Tennessee game, the long one, had like the highest ratings ever of a super regional, which is awesome. Just, all around pretty crazy. I think there were a couple exceptions that were kind of over quickly, but for the most part, really competitive, really exciting, down to the wire games. And so I think we were probably, the three of us were most active during the Texas A&M series, which was totally crazy, including like a wall falling apart because of trash and many crazy things outside of the just competitive nature of the super regional. But I thought overall just very similar to what we said last week, but on a different stage, that it was just great for parity, and there was a lot of you didn't know who was going to win in a lot of the super regionals, which was super exciting and very stressful as a fan to watch. But yeah, what are your guys' thoughts? Anything else that you sort of stuck out to you about the weekend?
You said as we were all stress panicking, texting each other during the A&M Texas series of like, this is the most stressed I've ever been watching softball. And like, that's how I felt. Yeah. Like, I know like, obviously our investment at that level with the teams that we work with has changed. Sometimes I think my enjoyment of being able to sit back and just like watch a game for what it is. But that series, watching those games, the Tennessee Alabama marathon, I'm like, it's exciting. It is incredibly stressful. And I've never been so like invested in super regionals like that before. And I don't know if it's a matter of like, sometimes when you get to super regionals, one team's going to blow another team out. And so you don't feel like it's, a series worth watching. But I feel like every series had something. There was something to it that you wanted to watch. And it was a cool feeling. Stressful, but a cool feeling to know that like every single super regional had something unique about it.
What a testament to the growth of our game. Like Duke, to me, is such a testament to the growth of our game, which is just like we can start programs at a place, obviously a supported athletic environment and everything that sort of comes with that. But we can start a program at a place 6 years. This is year 6?
7. No, 7. Yeah.
Yeah. And be going to the World Series that, right. We can sort of like take those investments and, what the consequences of those are. And so I think even stories like that you have UCLA in it, which has, just been around forever and has sort of set the tone and built the foundation of our sport. But then you have Duke, which is just, a new program that was able to build something. So I think that also is just incredible. It's like, we all just think Duke, well, obviously Duke's always been here, but it's like, no. So I think that was incredible from that standpoint too.
Yeah, I got a couple like bullet points. One is pitching. I mean, I think like there's part of me, as you guys all know, this is not kind, but I'm like, I always say it's in my soul to not like hitters because that's how pitchers are bred, it's just like you can't. And I just kept thinking these like, how can these hitters have seen these pitchers, so many times. Whether, I mean, 12, 13 times over the course of, and you're talking about the Mizzou Duke series, you're talking about the Texas A&M series, you're talking about, I mean,
everything,
LSU,
Florida, Baylor,
everything.
Yes.
So I think there's part of my brain, this is the part that's like probably, wired into like, when I am rooting for a certain pitcher and the hitters just look dumbfounded against a pitcher they saw, but on that like frustrates me. It still does because I think it's probably like trauma from growing up as a pitcher, but where I actually went is like, what that came down to, what those pitchers showed, Caleb Beavers, is tapping into, it was not their tools that beat those hitters round 13 in the lineup over the course of those 3 days. It was their, like, this competitive, deep soul, like, I refuse to die. I mean, there is something you just can't quantify. And when we sit in the world of, we talked about this when we brought up Daniel Laurie's, like, is it data or is it your soul? And this to me is a perfect example of the blending of both of those. You cannot just have good stuff and win in an environment like that when a hitter has seen you literally now for the 10th time through the lineups. It's like, it's not going to happen. It took like, pitchers that were, I mean, even the pitchers that were on the losing ends of this, but were literally down to the wire and still competing and still getting outs with that, being seen that many times. I just think it's such a testament. These are athletes that are, I mean, the ultimate level of competitors as far as I'm concerned. So I just think like kudos to them because that is, you guys know, obviously I love pitching. And when it comes down to it, that is what I really love about pitching is that like, it is what it breeds, the level of resilience and toughness. To me, there's like, I think there's no other position like it on the ball field because of how tough that position is and what you have to be able to like tap into beyond what's even physically possible. So that was amazing.
This is not related so much to performance, but I was thinking about this as like a fan. Like the sport is amazing, right? And super regionals were so fun to watch. And so who's not going to want to watch that? One thing I would maybe argue for is like, can we get rid of the 2-hour time blocks? Like the fact that the games were just jumping around where they were playing because we were over the 2-hour time block. It's like, just come on. like, I think we've proven at this point that the game is watched and wants to be watched, and that we deserve a block that, like, at least let's go 2.5. Let's give ourselves a shot here to make it within a window. Like, no game, it doesn't matter how fast you try to speed it up. A softball game is just not going to be done in 2 hours. I think we know this. So that definitely was a frustrating part about watching.
One of them was an hour and a half.
Yeah, there was one game that beat the block. Well, there was one game too that
one
beat
block
the 2
was an hour and a half. I think.
Yeah.
I'm like,
that was like the 5 o'clock, and then 6:30 was like when like A&M Texas started on Sunday.
But I think
it was Duke. It was Duke, and then Texas A&M. I'm like, do these people hate me? That's what I thought.
Well, the games start like that, but all the TV time blocks were 2 hours.
Right.
So what was happening is like, now playing on ESPN News, and you would go over there and it was like, just kidding, because this game's still going. Now playing on, it was like, where the hell are all these games? It was such a pain. So I definitely think like, I think we know this every time they do the 2 hour time block. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, I don't know why we keep trying to shove the games into 2 hours. So
the pitch clock clearly has no. It clearly hasn't had an impact if we're not.
It's not a slow game. It's not.
It's not a slow game.
I don't even know why we did that. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
it's not a slow game. It's not. It's just not a 2 hour game. Like that just doesn't. The more competitive it gets, the more back and forth it gets. Like, it's just not gonna. It's just not gonna be 2 hours. We don't give baseball 2 hour time blocks, so it's just not the sport. You know, it's just
the other bullets that I have are the Duke series made me emotional. I wrote that to the coaches. Like, that one really made me emotional. And I think it was just like, not only because of, what it means for a program to be so new, obviously our link to them, our relationship and watching them evolve over the last couple of years. We've talked about that in a previous episode. So, but I think more for me, I was just thinking about Marissa and what she's been through as a wife, as a mom this year. And I think like, this shit is hard for women, like, I think like if any woman can relate to this idea of when your home life is just taking so much capacity from you, and you're expected to be this like rock there, and still to show up and not just do your job, but to freaking crush your job. I feel like what we just witnessed is like superhuman. And I feel like it was so inspiring for like every, not just woman, but every like person out there that feels like they are, juggling 2 worlds and 2 heavy worlds. And I just like, that one got me. And I just thought like, man, it's unbelievable what has had and still has on her shoulders, and the leader that she has remained to get her team to where they are. I just think like I think we just watched something literally superhuman.
There was
also first Black coach at the World Series, which is
unbelievable.
Seems insane, but
there was a statistic that this, obviously we're big fans of Marissa and Duke in general, but there was a statistic that I thought like, man, what a huge thing for a head coach to say, I'm going to have my assistant coach third base. And the statistic was like, they've scored so many extra runs because of her change. Right. She's like, wait a minute, if we are more successful without me in the third base coaching box, great. You know what I mean? Like, let's switch this around. And I think like, her ability to delegate things to Nicole from a pitching standpoint, that decision, it's like, she recognizes the mental capacity it takes to manage pitching the way that she does and be a head coach. And like, is so thoughtful about delegating those things. I think Trish is in the same boat. It's like, they're really smart decisions. And to step back out of the third base box as the head coach and say, I think she's a first-year assistant coach, right? Isn't her assistant coach a first-year assistant coach too? Like, that's a lot of trust. And that's awesome. That's so much faith to put in that person, but the data doesn't lie. They're scoring more runs when she's not in the third base box. And I think that's interesting. I think it was a very like unique statistic, and I think very representative of Marissa's decision making of like, it's okay if it's not me. I just want us to do well.
Yeah. I think the whole story is so inspiring on so many levels. We need a movie about that. That's like, it just is so, it's so inspiring. Like I said, on so many levels. So that's great. My third bullet point is Texas A&M, man. That series nearly killed me. And I am still, I'm mourning. Now, asterisk, I've cheered for Texas all year long because I love Katie Stewart with every ounce of my soul. I love their family. And I would never, ever, ever root against her, ever. And so of course I was not rooting against Texas, no way. But Texas A&M, we work really, really closely with them. I start my weeks always by like watching, going through all their data and their film and all of that. And so there's a high level of investment there. Trisha and I are, we joke we have like the same soul, because like our conversations end up with us like screaming. And I'm like, are we we're yelling at like, I don't know, like we just, the like fire. And I felt, that what her team did to me was such a representation of who she is, what I love about her, and what sports what sports are for, what they're about, of just this like never lay down, never let someone tell you what's possible. Don't ever, like just pour yourself into what's in front of you, regardless of how many runs are on the board. Her team, and as far as I'm concerned, showed this level of fight that was like, man, that performance, as far as I'm concerned, deserved to be in OKC. That display of resilience, the way even down to like Julia Cottrell's
I was
last
going to say that
run.
I actually like
me?
that whole thing, like talking about getting emotional, because in the inning before you could see almost tears in her eyes because they
Like,
were
this is
unraveling
it.
on defense. Like, oh my God, like, you could see her face. You don't see her look like that very often, and you could, just as someone who's watched them this year, like it, you could see her getting emotional. And I think she also maybe had a mistake or something in there, and before she went to bat, or during her at bat, Trisha called her over, and they had a conversation, and I just thought, like, this is her last at bat. And so it was just unbelievable that she just smashed a home run, like, as someone who was, I think, crying, like, moments before, just emotional about what this all meant, and her ability to just tap into something. The whole
Maya
team did that
Perez.
over and over.
The whole country now knows who Maya Perez is. And
I actually know who she is, because she hit a very similar home run against my team 2 years ago. So,
but I mean, like, one of
your team too.
One of the things that Trisha and I said, we're talking about that week leading up, and we were talking about what it takes to win a series like that against the number one team is magic. It takes, like, you literally feel as if like magic is unfolding. The Maya Perez at bat, that was freaking magic. The Julia Cottrell, that was magic. Like, I mean, these things are like, the Trinity Cannon was magic. I mean, it just was like, they did have the magic. They had this just like resilience and magic. And as far as I'm concerned, it took, I'm still not there yet, but I'm like, it took me, like, I woke up the next day feeling like I was grieving a little bit, because I'm like, that team belongs in Oklahoma City. Everyone wants to watch that team keep fighting. And it just, nothing against Texas. They are a phenomenal team. And what I also loved about the series is both of those teams are freaking sassy and feisty and like, like cutthroat. There's always going to be somebody fighting and arguing. And I love that. You guys know that. Like, I think of like this passion is pouring out of everyone. People look pissed at each other. Like, I love that. I just think of like, this is sports just like oozing out of people. Their emotions are oozing out of them. And then they got to contain them just when they need to. I just thought it was a beautiful series by both. And it did, of course, I'm so thrilled for Katie. I'm so happy that she is getting to experience OKC. So I want to make sure that's really clear. But also, I had a real sadness after Texas A&M, because I felt like, damn it, they deserved that. They deserved it, and they had it. And that would have been unbelievable. It would have been unbelievable, and they were right there. So that one hurt. I'm not gonna lie. That one hurt a little bit. I'm still getting over that one a little bit.
My two contributions are one, I want a t-shirt made that says Cannon Wiggins 2028 for president, 100%. I want that on the ticket. I vote the crap out of that. And two, if I'm Texas, I'm like, what the hell? That is not a 16 seed. It's like you come in as this number one seed. It's going to be and I think there's probably something to that. The fact that like baseball also has the Texas A&M matchup here, right? And they're like in their regional. So there's definitely something to some of the like, drama being manufactured. But that series is going to be just electric. And then Texas is like, what the hell? This is a 16 seed and we're going 3 games and we're going extra innings. And, meanwhile, Oklahoma and UCLA have had extra days of rest. And it's like, that's a 16 seed. I think Mike White even said that. He's like, that is not a 16 seed. And I just think like that was, to me, very much a compliment.
They had, they like fought each other to the death, basically. Right. They literally fought each other to the death. And,
meanwhile, while that game was happening, I kept flipping back to it was the game 2, Tennessee, Alabama. And I was like, and then over here, Pickens and Beaver are literally pitching to their death because they're both at 4 million pitches. And I was like,
right.
Who's going to win this game? Yeah, it was all around. It was an incredible series and just a testament of our game all around. So it was super fun to watch. And I am excited. I'm going to go now. But I'm going to cheer for Katie later today with the jersey on. And
don't be sorry. Yeah.
I am super excited. I texted her the other day and I was like, I know it was expected. You guys have been 1 or 2 the whole year, but like, just make sure you sit back and realize like how incredible your freshman year, you're starting on the team, you're at the World Series, like just.
And don't make the mistake of thinking you'll always get back.
No,
it's like, oh, you come to your freshman year. Sometimes
think of how hard it was. That
you know what I was also thinking, because of what Oklahoma has done to our game. In some freakish world, when someone gets ranked 1, it still feels like they're the underdog. Like Texas is the underdog because they're ranked 1.
Yeah, and now Oklahoma's playing good, so everyone's like, oh shit.
Right. So it feels like if Texas won, that would be like the underdog winning. I'm like, Oklahoma has done that. That like anyone getting the 1 seed or a ranking, it feels like, can they do it? It's such an interesting dynamic. So there's an element that's like, people are cheering for Texas because it feels like, or cheering for the teams that might feel like, is this the year? I'm
excited tonight because also they're playing Stanford, so I get to watch Naisri in person, which I haven't seen. So I'm excited for that. Good. Also,
she's unbelievable.
Yeah,
she's unbelievable.
Yeah. So all right, I'm going to shift a little bit. So our sort of like next topic before our questions. I feel like we've been weaving in and out of this. We maybe just touch it a little bit with some conversations around like what development is. I'm really talking about like the younger ages. So this actually has come up. I've been weaving in a little bit of the 8U Little League, but I've had it a little bit on the baseball side also. A conversation around like, I think these phrases get thrown around. Obviously, we work in player development, and so like, what does that mean? But also, these conversations get thrown around at the youth level about like growing the game and making sure we have development and these types of things. And I think sometimes there's like, what does that mean? So the specific baseball example I'll give, and I think we can find a lot of softball equivalents, but I had a really important 8:30 p.m. Tuesday All-Star Committee decision about the 8U Little League All-Stars that I had to attend. But in that conversation,
combination of words right there is a lot.
It was a lot for me. But what I will say, so what happens is this 8U All-Star out of Little League then goes and plays the towns around us. So the structure's fun, I think probably and so you're trying to get, our little town's best athletes against this town's best athletes, whatever. So that's what you're deciding. And a conversation was around our area and our town being behind, that we have traditionally been behind the other towns. And so we lose. And they just kept saying that a big reason we're behind is because we do kid pitch too late. And so because we do kid pitch too late, they're not ready for the league or these all-star games. So we lose. And so they switched this year to do kid pitch even earlier, to start this like transition earlier. And I just, to be truthful, I'm more in the softball space, so I'm not as invested in baseball and what that looks like. So I didn't get too into the conversations. But what I was thinking is, what does behind mean? That we can't win the All-Star game? Or like that, like what does it mean? And it brought me back to this conversation of like growing the game and development. It's like sometimes we're talking over each other about what we're talking about here. And so I think like getting really clear on like, what's the point of development? Like, what's the point of it? Is the point of it, some of it could legitimately be about being able to compete on a bigger stage. And when you start to tick up, the scale and your stage gets bigger, are you ready for those? So I'm not saying that conversation is totally off, but it's forgetting, in my mind, what I was thinking is, if you did kid pitch earlier, half of my little league team would have already quit baseball. Yeah. So I don't like, because they couldn't have done that earlier. They can't even do it now. So what does it mean at these ages? I think we have this conversation a lot too at the younger ages of softball. It's like, what does development mean at the younger ages as we're going up? And then even when you get to the older ages, it starts to transition. But I just think that there's a lot of times when we're having these conversations, yeah, like we're just like talking through each other. It's like we're like, well, obviously we need to do that, XYZ sooner because that's what's going to prep them for this. But it's like, it doesn't always make sense in my mind. So, anyways, that's kind of what I was thinking of the topic, just because it's come up. I think we've had some conversations with some of our younger athletes about things like this. I obviously think we talk about this in terms of like, what does development look like at older ages? What are you trying to accomplish out of it? And I just think it's an interesting conversation because, like I said, I don't, yeah, I just don't think it always like gets to the place we're trying to go. So, anyways, curious what your thoughts are on that general topic. This could go wherever.
As you were talking, like where my my brain went was development is about what's best for the athlete in that time period. When you say like, okay, let's coach pitch a little earlier so that the teams are more prepared when they get older, is that what's best for those individual athletes, for where they are maturationally, where they are with their investment in wanting to play baseball, softball? And to me, it's exactly what you said. Like, we talk about growing the game, then that means we need to be developing players, and then essentially at whatever level they're playing, we're preparing them for that level, right? So that their attachment to the game at that level, they have success, they're enjoying it, it's fun. I didn't say wins and losses. I just said success, right? Of like, what does that mean for that kid at that age? The development piece is just then making sure that that kid is prepared for each time they go up in a playing level, not to just skip that part and say, well, you're already good enough, let's just jump a couple things. Maybe there are social experience needs for that athlete. Maybe there are developmental, like physical development needs for that athlete, late bloomers, whatever. To me, development is like, what is best for that athlete? What level are they playing at that's going to give them success with positive attachment to the game, that's going to keep them in the game? That to me is the ultimate goal of development, is like creating this pipeline underneath let's say like the high school level, where we don't have young women drop out at 13, 14 years old, which we know is the median age of attrition out of sports for young women, is right around that transition out of middle school to high school. So when you want to grow the game, it is growing it through this pipeline where these kids are playing on teams and playing at appropriate playing levels and developing the skills so that they feel like they are successful at that level they're playing, and then are at the same time prepared for what comes next for them. It's not just like jumping 17 steps and saying, well, you're an early bloomer, go play 14U at 10 years old. That's not development, right? That's shortchanging that to, maybe put your biggest players on a stage, biggest meaning physical players on a stage that they're ultimately not prepared for, maybe not socially, maybe not emotionally. But it's like, what's best for them at that playing level that they're at, where they are in their age, where they are at their maturational development, and keeping them in the pipeline. Don't burn them out before they can get to a place where they really can tap into all of the pieces of their physical maturation and all the benefits of that, and keep them healthy and going up to the college level. Keep them in the pipeline.
Yeah. I think it's as like when I was thinking of the coach pitch, kid pitch conversation, because we obviously have this a lot, maybe more in like dreamland, because it doesn't, this conversation almost doesn't exist at softball in a weird way, because we just start, I know at 7U, 8U, there is a conversation, but like we go very fast into just athletes pitching and straight up, which is a whole nother conversation, because you could argue in baseball, on our team, every single kid tries to pitch because it's just throwing overhands. I mean, so it's a little different than softball. So I think when I think about softball, when I think of this transition, is there's also a balance, and maybe this somewhat is not exactly the same as what you're saying, Laura, of if I'm preparing them to win right now in an all-star game or in this like 9U travel ball world, then yes, I need to push them in this stage to pitch and to do the things that are required on this stage. But on that stage right now, in 9U, 10U, 11U, are only the early bloomers. And so what happens when we're just preparing with that short-sighted goal in mind is that, yes, you do need to do that for them to have success at that stage. But unfortunately, there's many, many kids who cannot do that at that age, who will not have success in that transition, and you will weed all of those kids out. Where if I just if I slow it down at that stage, and I think to the extent there are kids who are, we have some kids, some 12-year-olds in softball who are 2 years post puberty. Mm-hmm. To the extent that they should play up, they can play up, and they can match their developmental stage. But for the rest of these athletes to slow play it in the understanding that yes, they will not yet be ready for X. They will not compete against the 2-year post puberty kid well on that stage. That's true. But rushing it probably just pushes them out. It doesn't prepare them to then face that kid. Like that doesn't work. So it's this balance between what does it look like in the interim for someone to develop, which is why when we talk about development at OGX, it's really trying to get the athlete and the parents focused on their kid and is their kid developing against their kid. Yeah. Period. And of course, then you want to go in the game and say like, okay, yes, but that's not translating, or here's how it's translated. And then the question is, we've had this conversation with some of our younger athletes lately is, yeah, but so she's having success in X, and then the thing you're saying she's not having success is kind of expected based on where she is developmentally. So let's not get too bogged down in like focusing on that failure, because she's still pre-puberty. She's still waiting for X. She's still, she's not on the same playing field yet. And so let's not get super focused on those shortcomings, and let's just keep, her trucking on her process and that type of thing. So anyways, I don't know if I really answer, but I do think it's like it's a weird conversation, and probably a conversation that all the wrong people are having. That's what I thought in that meeting, is like, you got like, I'm not criticizing you because you're volunteering your time and you're helping, and like they're great people from that standpoint, but like none of these people have background in like development or like science of it, or how to best do it, or any of it. And so like we're just arbitrarily saying like, oh, let's just move kid pitch earlier, that will do it. It's like, it's way more complex than that. I wish it was that easy. And like that, there's no proof that will work. That's like, what thought have you put into that? What questions have you asked people who know about development? Like, I think also the part of the problem is that we aren't having the right conversations because people in charge of the decisions don't have the background knowledge of those things, of how that works. So it's complicated. That's for sure.
You guys know where I stand. I don't even like the conversation. I'm not, because it annoys me. Because as far as I'm concerned, elementary school age kids and competitive baseball, softball, they're oxymorons. It just is like the game doesn't start till you're 12, give or take, right? Like 12. I mean, it doesn't start until you're 12 years old. It's not a fundamental sport. It is, your exposure to it up until that point needs to be free. It needs to be exploratory. It needs to be fun. It needs to be backyard Sandlot style, man.
Right.
It'd be like watching the Sandlot movie and those kids were 5 years old or something. You know what I mean? Like basically that's where it ends, where you just go in the backyard and like play for fun, and you get to know the game through a way that's just like organically. So to me, like competitiveness, development of skill beyond this just like individual organic growth doesn't even start till someone's like at least 12. I think for girls, it's probably around then. It might even be a little bit later for boys.
But so I just
like,
that,
I don't even want to talk about it before then.
Well, the problem is, like, I totally agree with you. And also, though, now kids aren't exposed, though, to the skills that make up the sport in any other way. So the one contribution I did make to this meeting, I said, have you ever thought about, like, maybe instead of just going kid pitch earlier, that we structure the youth ages different, so it's more of like fun and academy style, instead of like 12 versus 12 boring ass t-ball where they all tackle each other, and like it's that we are teaching them at that stage just to like, how do you throw a ball, how do you catch a ball, like that we're just putting that, it's like we're recreating the backyard environment. Like I saw Driveline, they're like academies, they just started playing, I am forgetting the name of it, but it's like a smash ball, or it's a game that people came up with. It's like a better development version of t-ball that's more fun. It's almost like kickball-esque, but you're swinging, like basically, because we don't have environments of just like going in your backyard and doing it. It's like it's on these organizations now to recreate that. So I do think that there's some like intentionality that has to happen around that. Because otherwise you're just like fighting the system. But
Crystal, you know what I just thought of? Do you guys remember in the movie Austin Powers, which at this point is probably like decades ago, and
so old,
Dr.
Oh,
Evil's
yeah.
you just say that is literally what goes in my head every time someone, like a parent, wants to talk about their 10-year-old
Right.
tournament or games as if it's like literally a 20-year-old. I just am like, I don't know how to communicate that this conversation is outlandish, and I'm not interested.
Right. And it's
because
been proven
it's like,
over and over and over,
Yeah.
even in the combine for football, that we cannot identify skill, that we just can't do it. It's improving. It's not like,
it's
oh,
like,
we
let
don't
them
think.
enjoy,
It's
let them
been proven.
figure
We do
out
not
if
know.
they like to play.
Yeah, they're always
Figure
like,
out they
this
like
kid's
to play.
so good. This is a real good. This guy kept saying, this is a real good baseball family. I'm like, what the hell does that
What
mean?
does that
He's
mean?
8.
Yeah.
Like,
What
he's
does that
8.
mean?
It's just like, whatever. My son, I thought, was terrible at baseball. He kept asking to be catcher. I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. Like, I don't really think I want to throw you back there. And
They're
I
like,
did.
Henry.
And he's freaking good at
And they're
it.
like, I love you, and you
Yeah.
like die back there.
Yeah, but he's good at it. And so, like, shame on me for thinking, like, I don't know. You know, he's just like, kids, they take different things. It's like, you never know. My goal with my son is just like, I don't know for sure. He doesn't seem to love baseball, but I don't know for sure. So I just want him opportunities to be around it in case that's something he like ends up enjoying. And it's just like, anyways, okay, we gotta change subjects. We could go on for this forever, and we're already this our
it
question
doesn't
today.
Oxymoron, competitive level, measuring skill, giving people pitch types until they're 12 years old. In summary.
Yeah. I saw I said this to Laura, but there's a hoodie that's a green fleece that looks like a bush with Homer Simpson like disappearing on the back. Like they made that GIF into a fleece, and I was like, our whole staff needs this.
It's amazing.
It's just when we're at or around things like that, we just like put that fleece on and then just turn around like and just walk away. Just like I'm just Homer Simpson right out of this freaking question, because it's not. Yeah.
No, not. It's just brutal.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Our conversation or our question today is from Clarisa, the head coach at Penn State. We've worked with them for a while.
Great
season. Lovely person. Great season. Another team that's just on the up, you know, because of all the work she's putting in to make sure that they continue to climb, and just another testament. So good question. And we've now like really ate up a lot of time with that topic. So we'll see how short we can answer this question. So probably not very.
My question is, when evaluating a pitcher or player in general, how do you know when you should change certain movement patterns or allow a player's natural movement patterns to continue? Thank you.
It's a short, easy question. I thought we're just
That's such a good question.
It's so good.
You know what I think of?
Whole episode.
Hello from Happy Valley. Every time Laura and I go to Happy Valley, we're like, we're so damn happy in Happy Valley. We love it.
We always tell the story of like both of us growing up in like the Northeast area, and all of our like people we went to high school with went to Penn State, and we never understood the obsession with it. And then our first time on campus, we're like, oh yeah, like, this is why everybody's obsessed. Right.
Yeah, it's so fun. Just like the vibe is great. Anyway, that doesn't have anything to do with Clarissa's question, but I'm going to go shout out to Clarisa. I have a lot of respect for her because one, great question, but two, obviously anytime you come into a brand new program, culture shifts are heavy. You know, you've got like most of she's obviously not the only one in that boat, but she came in and dove into player development and data and leveraging using in-game analytics, and you know, Rapsodo Yakertek just dove in and had to not only dive into that and push herself and her coaches, but then also blend that into a culture that was probably split, you know, as far as old coach, new coach, and like, man, in the short time that she's been there, what a year. And it's not an accident, you know, like what she has been able to accomplish is not an accident. She has, you know, just grown, you know, pushed herself so much to take in information, and again, just grown that whole culture to lean on the same level of info and resources. So it's awesome. It's amazing. Just a great person, someone we really enjoy being around, but also I'm just proud of their team. I mean, it's really, really exciting to watch. All right. What was the question again? How do you know when to change one's patterns? Yeah. Okay. So, that's a really good question. You don't always. And I would say, I'm typically quite confident when I'm giving a recommendation, only because we do this all the time. It is our job. So I'm going to speak first and foremost on how we do it, knowing full well that this might not be the level of either information or experience that someone else might be going into it with. But we start all of our athletes out with assessments. And the first thing that we want to know is like, what are they producing on the ball? Is there anything there? Is it just like, it's literally like everyone else, it's just average and nothing? It's good. It's better than most people, but at the stage they're now going to be on, they're going to be in the Big Ten, for example. It's average for the Big Ten. So that's another conversation. Or is it in this category of like, that is something you don't see often, right? Like what she's able to produce, that level of variability, break in that direction is very, very unique. Okay. Even at the full national stage, you have to really decide that. And then there is this link to like, okay, what she produces on the ball has to do, and obviously I'm talking about pitching right now, but what she produces on the ball is because of how her arm unravels. So why is it unraveling like that? She does not produce XYZ on the ball because she spins more than other people. Okay. Her arm unravels from a certain angle and length and position close to her body, away from her body, whatever that is. So then why does it do that? And so what we do in the assessment is to like basically tell that story in reverse order. So you want to identify is like, start with those 3 buckets. Is it just like average at the high school level? We can't, it's not going to work for us at this level. Then go after everything. You know what I mean? Like go after everything because you've got nothing to lose. If it's like you've got normal stuff for this level, then probably it's pretty safe. All you're probably going to do by going after some things is to, you'll watch it. If you start seeing like, okay, once we did this started to change, you'll start to see that relationship. But it's really not until we get to the 3rd category where something is very unique and weird that then you're like, if I mess with this, those are the athletes where you have to preserve their weirdness. They're going to look like they accomplish it in a way that's like they shouldn't be. And it's like kind of cringy when you look at them in video. You have to let it ride. And instead, you have to recognize that the way they get that is because they had this strategy or compensation to get out of a really funky pattern. And because of that, they are much more likely to experience soreness and pain. So also preserve them, not just preserve them in the way they do things, but preserve them workload wise, knowing that like they got this freakish arm slot thing or whatever they're doing, but that is not really what that segment of the body should be doing. So awesome for them for producing something great, but also, it's exposed to, a little bit more as far as the pain injury scale. So those are the buckets that I say you put them in. You guys know, I always say like, I do not believe in a world of just talking about patterns. I despise the world of like, don't you see your patterns are better? I'm like, yeah, because you changed them. So you're going to say they're better. You know what I mean? Like it's not subjective. You have to. Did I make that clear? Connect any changes in what's going on in patterns with what it did, what it produced differently on the ball. If it didn't produce anything different, and the patterns are irrelevant,
or pain,
it changed nothing, or pain, good one, then it did nothing. So nobody pat yourself on the back. Pitching instructors of the world. If there are worlds though where you made someone look more conventional. Her patterns now look like Sally who's on TV, but because of that, now she's no longer her. And what her was something really unique. So that's the piece. You have to know that level of connectivity. And I'm speaking from a pitching standpoint. So that I want to be clear. And if you don't have that level of information, then as far as I'm concerned, like you have to measure result in a different way. But also then the way I look at it, if you don't have that level of information, if you're not tracking ball flight, you don't have the luxury or the privilege of just attacking people's patterns. That's kind of how I feel about it. You don't. Yeah. So you have to start with that.
Yeah. I think I always say too, like, even in this conversation of like how we attack patterns, we don't wholesale change anyone. So I think the other thing is like, I think the other conversation is when we're talking about influencing things, it's very organic. It's through some different start types, through sort of like bumpers around like, okay, we want to try to feel X in your start. Maybe in hitting, we might say like, we'll have a conversation of like, okay, the only way that we might accomplish this is we might have to change the way you start. So if we have a kid that no strides and that's not really working for her for whatever reason, or a kid has a big leg kick and that's not really working for her for whatever reason, maybe we'll make some suggestions for changes. So that would probably be the most aggressive, I think, that we might go for something like that. But generally we're talking about little, suggestions almost of changes, not suggestions in like, hey, Sally, try this, but like, okay, you're going to do a pause drill now and you're going to hold this plyo. And we think that's going to have this influence, and that's going to happen in some way organic through the design of the drill. And the same thing in hitting, like, okay, you need the time, you're coming up out of your posture as you're going forward. So we think hook 'em or this drill is going to feed trying to stay into that or go into load at the right time. And that's what we're going for. So what I always say too is like, sometimes when we have an athlete when she's young all the way through up, or there's different examples, like some of the changes might become a more aggressive, but when we show side by sides of our kids, like it's not this like, oh, now Sally doesn't even look like Sally. Like we're talking about, okay, see how that changed the timing here and this little, it's not these big wholesale changes. So I think in some ways we almost always are working within that athlete's parameters, as far as what's sort of natural to her and she can do. These aren't just like, okay, let's try this whole different thing that looks like whatever.
No,
because
for
we
sure.
just want to do that. So I think there's the other thing is like, that doesn't make sense. And that was definitely much more of how I, years ago, 15 years ago, I would have approached hitting as like, let's force everyone to do X, Y, Z. And so constraint-led training in some ways, it does sort of fall.
Yeah, it protects their individuality of movement. I mean, I think that's what you're saying. It's like we stay within the parameters. But there are times in pitching. Here are two concrete examples. She has a really, I'm bending my arm. No one even can see it in the window here. But like she has a lot of elbow flexion. Yeah. So her arm path really is shortened. She has a lot of elbow flexion. Because of that, she produces nothing special. We have to go after a protocol in her plyos with the weights that we're throwing to gain more length. We have to do that. We are going to measure if we're getting more length on the arm. Versus B, she has a lot of elbow flexion, but then the way that she cuts and unravels, she's got this freakish arm side run. Do not touch it. So I think there are examples of like her tool is X. And even though that's not a great arm path and likely she's going to throw a little bit less velocity with that, we can't, if we're like, we have to go after velocity, we need more length to the arm. If you took the same approach with pitcher B you did in pitcher A and you went after length and you got it, you would sacrifice something. So that's the layer that I'm talking about. Direction of launch. Yep. This kid launches to this direction. And because of that, everything, again, is the ball flight average. And if that's the case, go after the pattern and fix it. But if what she does to get away, what her arm does, what her body position does, because of that same issue, the same breakdown, but it leads to something good, then you can't go after it. So I think that's the difference. I agree with you, Krista, in the sense of like, any change we're making is always within the parameters of how that individual moves just generally. Mm-hmm. We're not like, we have to look like that kid or like this is the exact position. It is more organic, but the decision of whether to clean something up or not, at least in pitching, it could be pitching specific, is very much, it has to be identified of whether or not that produces something different, special, interesting, et cetera, first, because the reality is for most people, bad patterns block them from producing something special. So you're going after things. Yeah. But the greats, they don't have perfect patterns, not in the pitching motion. It is too complicated. Some of them do just have really smooth, but most of them don't. And they just have some freakish strategy at the end. And so you better not go after because they don't look a certain way. It's like Sally is doing X and so is Susie, but Sally needs to change it and Susie needs to be left alone. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. I think what's really like underlying what both of you are saying is like, you don't go after those things, right? These small changes, these pattern efficiency things until they have the movement quality to do it. I think that is such the piece when we're talking about like, we want so-and-so to look like X. If you want to have Monica Abbott's or Kat Osterman or Jordy Ball's patterns, you better move like them. And that is not likely, right? So working within the constraints of the athlete also means that a lot of these changes, that even if they're small and subtle, they assume the athlete's capable of that change. And if we are not growing movement quality underneath of these high velocity, high frequent skills, the frequency of those skills, you're chasing nothing. You're chasing nothing that's going to stick with any longevity. And so my answer to that is like, one, performance, of course, but then the pain concept, right? If your swing, if your pitching patterns lead you to having to take, time away from the sport because your body cannot tolerate those patterns, then that, to me, is like the most urgent reason why you would ever go after someone's patterns. But it's not, okay, on this pitch or this swing, I want you to do X. It's, we gotta make sure your body can tolerate the stress of these activities underneath of it before I can even ask you to make change, right? And so many of our young athletes, they're not capable of change right now because their movement quality and their ability to even movement problem solve separate from pitching and hitting, it's not there yet. And then when you're chasing something in a college athlete, strength and conditioning's got to be on board with it too, right? Because if you're trying to make something like a preserve an arm side run, keep a pitcher or a hitter out of back pain, hip pain, shoulder pain, whatever, your strength and conditioning's got to come along with you. If you're trying to do that only through the lens of the pitching coach, you're on the compensation merry-go-round. You're just going to change things, just willy-nilly, essentially. But without that information, like you said, the assessment, you don't know what you're chasing. You're chasing what you think someone should look like. And that may be completely inappropriate for them, whether it sets off their pain dysfunction cycle, it impacts their performance. I think athletes adapt because of the environments that they're placed in, right? So when we say natural tendencies, we don't mean that athlete is just like born with that and that's what they have, right? Athletes and humans always interact with their environments. So those natural tendencies have come up because of their exposure to the problems in the game they've had to solve. Well, if the problems have changed because the level has changed, their position has changed, their body has changed, then we have to help them adapt to that new environment. So leaving someone in their natural tendencies might feel comfortable, but it may not help them evolve to solve new problems. And that's what we do as humans, is solve problems, whether it's with interactions to our environment or how we function as an athlete. We're always solving problems, and the environment's a big part of that. And so I think, like, when we say natural tendencies, let's be clear of, like, natural tendencies mean that's how they evolve through the game, right? And if that's not the level they're playing at anymore, then we have to work with them on adapting. But it's not big sweeping changes. They're still who they are, and we have to preserve that because there are probably things about them that make them very special. For sure.
Yeah.
What I will add to this as well is that there's nobody in the country that does this better than us. I'm not afraid to say that because I know it's true. And because of just our level of experience, and this is what we do all day long and the data we collect, that we have it down to do we have a crystal ball? Can we ever say something is certain? No. But of like, okay, we need to preserve this. So I feel very confident that we can't go after this. We can't let her change this because we have to preserve this. But we should, if we add just this, if we get her to add a little bit more from here and we attack just this piece without this piece, like that's the level that's how granular it gets in our debriefs. Mm-hmm. This is what our college assessments are about. So obviously, as we're out there now going to like sign up our schools of who's going to do our college assessments, this is what they are. Yep. This is this level of like, what are we dealing with from a health and wellness standpoint, from a ball flight standpoint? And then like, how are they achieving those things? What should you go after? What's the game plan to do it? And what can you not? I mean, it's breaking that apart. The reality is it is difficult, right? And so I think of like, it is really difficult and we're great at it. I mean, that's just the reality. This is what we do every single day with every one of our athletes. And because we have, this is our job. This is what we do day in and day out. We're very, very knowledgeable about this. But Clarissa's right. The reason why it's a great question, because when you are just a coach out in the world, it's not easy to do that. It's not easy to do that. It's obviously like the value that we bring in that, but that's obviously the general recommendations we give, as far as like how we go about doing that. But the reality is we obviously have a level of expertise. I always say we don't have to win a single ball game. So let's be clear, coaches have one job and we have a different job. And our job is to have a level of expertise in this thing that is above everyone else. Like we're not doing our job. We're not doing that well. So I think of like, we obviously go to certain schools. We continue to like talk about specific cases, different Redefine the Circle podcast episodes where we're bringing up case studies of those things and just keep educating generally. But it's a tough one. It's a very fine line.
Well, yeah. And I think it's just sort of like finish this up because we are over what we normally do. But I think that just like video for the sake of video and patterns for the sake of patterns, I think in conclusion is not ever a good path to chase, because unless you know what those impacts will have or are measuring what the impacts will have, which could be just by game results, you could be measuring that. If you think, this kid can't get to as a hitter, this kid has a huge hole in the inside corner because of how she does that, and you measure that simply, you don't need all ball flight. Is she getting to that pitch better? Is she able to do that? Like if you're measuring that, if that's a big hole, that's a problem. But if you just don't like the way it looks,
yes,
that's probably not a good reason to go after it, because that kid might have success for that reason. And, that is not a good reason. So
when people say, what's your style? I'm like,
right.
I'm sorry.
No.
Excuse me?
So to the extent, that's our style. To the extent that you're just going after something because of the way it looks, then just be careful. Tread lightly, because
that's a very good statement.
Yeah,
going after something for just how it looks. That's a great way to put it.
Right. Yeah. And so I think it's just not a good thing. And I always say, like, some of the things floating around the game sometimes, and we're like, we do this because it helps her with this. I'm like, based on what? Did you measure that? Like, did it change anything? Like, it's just, and the athletes are allowed to hold you accountable. And that's what you as a coach should be holding yourself accountable to, is like, is it actually changing the structure? Or the sort of, not the structure, the results, the outcome. Is it having the thing? When we talk about hitting, it's like the reason we would go after patterns is they have some big hole in something. They have a lack of adjustability. They can't get to X pitch. They can't whatever. And the further up in the game, I always say with like Katie, what her summer is going to be about is like, what holes did you have this year? Because now everyone knows it. You're going to be a sophomore next year. So you better believe you're going to see that hole attacked as soon as you get back next year. So we are trying to minimize holes as hitters. That's our equivalent of ball flight. And so is it doing that, or do they? I think one of the biggest questions is, do they actually have that hole, or are you think with your eye that would be a hard thing for them to get to, and so you've created that in your mind that they just can't do that, making sure that that's not something you're just creating, a problem you're creating. People could do freakish things. Right. Ohtani's swing, like, go watch Ohtani's swing. Most people would look at Ohtani's swing as a child and change it, because he's got arm bar, he gets, he does some different things, but he checks boxes that he needs to check, and you definitely aren't going to change that unless you need to. So I think that's the thing, is like, even athletes as high as Ohtani's of the world, they do tweak things here and there, but they are based on something. And so you better make sure if you're attacking something, it's based on something, especially the higher and higher up in the game. And as we said earlier, if you're talking about 10-year-old, just
natural tendencies.
Don't do it.
Natural tendencies are just adaptations to date, which means
maybe just don't change anything when they're 10. Just let them go in the backyard. All right, good one. So good. We went an hour. So more to come. Follow our stories. I'll be posting. Hopefully, Katie hitting like a bomb or something tonight in my Stewart jersey.
That'd be good.
I will.
Let's go,
be
Kate.
there. Yeah. So hook 'em for Kate, or just, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a Stewart version, because we really don't have any tie to Texas, but they're fine.
Man, I can't go there yet. Not after last series.
Just go Katie. I'll just say that. Go Katie. Go Duke. I think the game right now, I checked because I was curious if they started, but UCLA Alabama 0-0 last time I checked. So it did.
Good one.
So
cool.
All right. Well, go softball. Right. All right. Until next week.